Welcome to English Vidyarthi. Friends, we are doing chapter number 6 from Snapshots, grade 11. The name of the chapter is The Ghat of the Only World, written by Amitav Ghosh. And this video is part 2 of the chapter. So I'm reading page number 55 and I'm going to explain the same page. I was shocked into silence, and a long moment passed before I could bring myself to say the things that people say on such occasions. Shahid, you will be fine. You have to be strong. Now, we remember that Shahid Ali Khan and Amitav Ghosh, they were talking, and Shahid requested him to write about him and their friendship after his death. Though Amitav is not convinced to do this because he is feeling quite miserable with the thought that his friend was going to die. And Shahid is trying to convince him to write about him. From the window of my study, I could see a corner of the building in which he lived, some 8 blocks away. It was just a few months since he moved there. He had been living a few miles away in Manhattan when he had a sudden blackout in February 2000. After tests revealed that he had a malignant brain tumor, he decided to move to Brooklyn to be close to his youngest sister, Samita, who teaches at the Pratt Institute a few blocks away from the street where I live. So in this paragraph, Amitav explains how Shahid Ali Khan became his neighbor. Initially, he used to live in Manhattan, but in February 2000, he lost his eyesight, and then he decided to spend his remaining time being close to his sister, Samita, who used to live in Brooklyn. So in this way, he became a neighbor of Amitav Ghosh, and as he mentions here, his house was only 8 blocks away from his apartment. Shahid ignored my reassurances. He began to laugh, and it was then that I realized that he was dead serious. Again, coming back to the same conversation, Amitav says that I was not able to convince him, I was not able to reassure him that he would be fine. And he began to laugh. That means he knew that these reassurances were in vain. I understood that he was entrusting me with a quite specific charge. He wanted me to remember him not through the spoken recitatives of memory and friendship, but through the written word. The intention of Shahid Ali Khan was that he wanted their friendship, to be everlasting, to be remembered by everyone. And so he wanted something solid. He wanted their relationship to be authenticated by written work rather than just by verbal expressions. So he forced Amitav Ghosh to write something about their relationship. We know, friends, that things which are just spoken or which are just talked about, they are very temporary, but things which are written somewhere, they are everlasting. So this was the reason that he wanted Amitav to write about him and their friendship. Shahid knew all too well that for those writers for whom things become real only in the process of writing, there is an inbuilt resistance to dealing with loss and bereavement. Being a poet, Shahid knew very well that there are few writers who are so sensitive, who are so dedicated to their work, that during the process of writing about few characters, about their emotions, they feel the same. And those types of writers, they generally avoid to write about loss or bereavement or death or something very sad, because then they go through the same thing during the process of writing, and then the process of writing becomes very painful. So he knew this very well, And he also knew that this was one of the reasons that Amitabh was trying to avoid to write about him. He knew that my instincts would have led me to search for reasons to avoid writing about his death. And he knew very well that Amitabh would never prefer to write about his death, and he might be looking for excuses. Some of them were like this: I would have told myself that I was not a poet, that our friendship was of recent date, that there were many others who knew him much better and would be writing from greater understanding and knowledge. So these were the possible excuses that Amitav would give, and Shahid knew about this. All this Shahid had guessed, and he had decided to shut off those routes while there was still time. And Shahid knew how to stop this. That's why he talked about this thing quite in advance, so that Amitav had some time to think about it. He can also start writing, and he can complete his work. You must write about me. Clear though it was that this imperative would have to be acknowledged, I could think of nothing to say. And imperative, that means it was just like an order. So he just said, you have to write about me, and Amitav knew that he couldn't deny this. What are the words in which one promises a friend that one will write about him after his death? Amitav was feeling very bad to give a promise to Shahid Ali Khan to write about him after his death, because after all he was his best friend. But still he knew that it was an order and he had to fulfill the promise. Finally I said, Shahid, I will do the best I can. By the end of the conversation, I knew exactly what I had to do. I picked up my pen, noted the date, and wrote down everything I remembered of that conversation. This I continued to do for the next few months. It is this record that has made it possible for me to fulfill the pledge I made that day. So once it was decided that Amitav Ghosh would write about Shahid Ali Khan, he started writing down notes, and he started keeping a record of each and every conversation between them, and based on that he started writing about Shahid Ali Khan. I knew Shahid's work long before I met him. His 1997 collection, The Country Without a Post Office, had made a powerful impression on me. So Shahid Ali Khan was already an established poet at this time. He wrote a poem named The Country Without a Post Office in 1997, and Amitav became a great fan of his writing. His voice was like none I had ever heard before, at once lyrical and fiercely disciplined, engaged and yet deeply inward. Now here, friends, we come to know about Shahid's personality. Because he was a poet, his voice was very well trained to recite a poetry. So, very different from others. Amitav says that his voice was lyrical, his voice was musical, and fiercely disciplined. There was a kind of discipline in his voice. He had a very good control over his voice, because when reciting a poetry, one has to be very careful about stress on words, syllables in a sentence, and then tone, intonation, pitch. So Shahid Ali Khan had really worked very well on this, and it was being reflected in his voice. It was a voice which was engaged and yet deeply inward, because he was quite introspective. You could see those depth in his voice.